What's going on, Soul Tribe? I salute the divinity in you, and welcome to the Chariot and Friends. Justin here, and how you feeling? We're wrapping up that lunation in Aries. Excuse me. And I really like this phase of the lunar cycle because we are getting to that final chapter. We started off with the new moon in Aries, and then we end in the waning crescent in Aries, and it really is a time to just kind of process what did we move through. There was a lot of energies, a lot of really kind of big conjunctions that were going on, a lot of like life questions that I feel like maybe would have been brought up here during this period of time. So a lot to look into and think about where that's going to propel us forward and what might be getting in the way of our progress here. But before we jump into that, if you're new here, again, my name is Justin. And one of the things, or another, when you come across this video, you're in sync with the moon, and she loves that. But this is also a place for you if you happen to have Cancer in your placements, Sun, Moon, Rising, maybe even Mars, wherever. This one's for you. And I do tarot card spreads based on that lovely luminary, the good old moon. The moon treated me today, speaking of a waning crescent. The moon was out there doing its waning thing, and then Venus, not too far up in the distance, Venus was there, and I'm just like, dang. It was a sight. And I'll talk about what sign they're in, what phase it's in, and when it's going void. Of course, just all them lunar shenanigans. And just so you're all aware, this is a general reading, not a one-to-one. So take what fits into your story, discard the rest, and everything will be dope. Now, let's jump into it. Because, yeah, this was I really do, again, I was actually born during a waning crescent, so I think that's why I really do particularly like these ones where we're just really kind of, really doing some true integration, just kind of recuperating and resting during this period of time. But, before we get into that, depending on, let me get my notes up here, depending on when you're watching here, what time is it? Happy Venus. Oh, it's been lovely. It's Venus Day. When this is coming out, love it. And Venus is associated with Fridays. And one thing that you can do that's very Venusian, just check out Venus. Venus is in a great place right now. I think especially on the 27th, I think it's going to be by Saturn. So that's another thing to look forward to. But Venus days I find are a great day for doing very Venusian things. Those are like my kind of shaving days, just to get cleaned up, or maybe go out there and have like a place, like maybe schedule some sort of like trip with some friends, maybe go on a picnic, maybe go on a hike, maybe go see a movie, whatever that's looking like, or yeah, just maybe even go to appreciate some art, or go smell some flowers, listen to the birds, go watch the sunrise or sunset. Those I think are very great ways of working with the kind of Venusian energies, those sort of built-in things in this journey that just make it just that much more sweeter. That just adds that bit of harmony and concord that Venus brings. But another thing that I like to do on these days is talk about my or really, well, talk. Yeah, well, we can talk about it and think about my relationship with Venus. How do I think about, like where Venus is maybe transiting for me right now and what aspects that it'll be forming. Venus will soon be moving back into Aries, and that'll be really nice. That'll be kind of lovely there because there'll be more flow coming through because I got a lot of fire placements, be slight little discomfort with the sun, but starts off sextiling the moon, so who doesn't love that? And so, those are some great ways I think to just like kind of get familiarized with the planets in a way that's not so overwhelming. Like, okay, Venus days, I'm just going to focus on Venusian things, relationships, abundance, things along those sort of lines. Like that's great way of working with Venus, and even like looking at different Venus returns. That might be even something to see, like what would might be coming up in your relationships, or what house is needing more harmonizing, more love, a little more, yeah, beauty, compassion, maybe that's coming through there. So just some things to think about. But yeah, let's get into the lunar shenanigans, because on the 25th of April, the moon is going to enter into Aries at about a little shortly after midnight. It's going to be at about 12:24 a.m., and that's going to be Pacific time. And like I said, we're in that waning crescent phase, and this is the last little kind of wisp of moon that we have there before we get ready to get into the new moon that's happening in Taurus. And I was really kind of thinking about that the other day, and how where all the lunations are, important. I find this one in Aries and the one that's coming up in Taurus are particularly potent because this one would have been where the sun was exalted when they had this energy, and now the next one will be when the moon's exalted in Taurus. And so I think that there's something here. Really think about how you grown in this period of time. Think about the things that you really excelled at, and then the things that got in your way as well. And then what are we going to take those lessons and how are we going to take that progress and go over into the next lunation there, and thinking about what we're going to initiate for there. How do we take that fire, and then how do we take that sort of like seeding living energy of Aries and then fuel it into the pastures of Taurus. I think that's where we're getting ready to kind of move into, the transfer this fire into something with some longevity, something with some endurance, as we move into this thing. But we want to look at the things that got in the way of the will, because Aries they're the cardinal fire sign, active, young in nature, ruled by Mars. So Aries is really just unfettered, unadulterated, just action, the will in motion, the will to be, to live, to do. And I really like the moon in Aries. I think that's a very invigorating sign. Aries in for me is very inspirational. They can spark a fire in you that's just, yeah, there's such an, I think, an appreciation. I'm just talking about Aries energy in general. And I think that this thing too, I think this phase, because this is quite a contradictory, or kind of a contradicting energy, where you have that life-giving energy of Aries, but in the waning side of the moon. But I think it's about how all of those experiences that happen over this lunation can be like motivation for something to come next, because it's like, I really did hit it when I got to that full moon, and things really did come to a real kind of bang here. So it's like I can maybe make that bigger on the next one, and then keep going with that. So yeah, I think something to just kind of carry into is just like, how do you take those real big moments, those wow, and how do you take that fire, that heat, and to keep that momentum. I think that's what this energy is kind of guiding to. And let's go ahead and get over to your general energy of the day, because I think that kind of ties in nicely with this lunation, because you got hexagram 53, which is progress. And the changing line is line 3, which is a bit of a tricky one of the lines there. And I invite you, I have a link down in the description box below with a link. It should be under like I think it's under like I-Ching Taoist or something like that. And it has all the different hexagons. Or just look up the different lines for the I-Ching and meditate on the changing lines and see what comes up for you when you kind of run those lines through your mind. It's really fascinating when you do those sort of like those kind of meditations on those. But the changing line 3. Oh, and this is wind over mountain. And just off the bat, this gives me just like the imagery of just like a messages coming from on high. Spirit kind of bringing it down, a message to the land from the heavens, in the sense that the mountains carry over. And this one gives me more of an omen. But this is change line 3, which is the wild goose is progressing to the plateau. The husband sets out but will not return. The wife conceives but will not deliver. Misfortune. Guard against robbers. And now I know this sounds like a bit extreme here, but I think it is it's looking at this place where, looking at the things that stagnate you. Because, when we're thinking about a plateau, after a while, a plateau may sound sweet for like a minute. Of course, we want some stability, and we're getting ready to get in Taurus. We want that stability, that foundation, but we want that sort of growth that is going towards something. Even if there's a bit of an bit of an incline. I get if we want to have breaks in between, kind of flatten out the lands here. But I really think that this is looking at the things like, when you think of the imagery as the husband setting out on something but not coming back. That gives me the energy of like just the active energy, the yang, like, oh, I'm going to do this thing but then not following through. Or with the wife conceiving, it's like getting this great idea and then not growing anything with it, not really nurturing this thing, so it's looking at some stuff that rob you of your time, those things, that those sort of like maybe this could be maybe even like sort of like maybe mental traps that we set up for ourselves. I'm thinking about the Eight of Swords when that kind of comes up there. Or this could be maybe we have certain relationships where you maybe you share something with someone and then they happen to bring it down, or whatever this may be, whatever the hindrance or the block may be. I think it's, if this is some sort of like addiction or whatever. I think this is really just kind of taking at the things that just kind of hamper the will, that keep the that true expression. Like I said, how Aries is an unfettered sign, really, but what keeps the ram locked down? What is that looking like? And then I think that with Aries too being martial ruled, that there is this innate courage that comes with them, because you can't really have the courage if there's nothing to, we don't have anything that we're afraid of. And so this may be, as it makes sense for you, looking at the things that might be kind of hampering again, that maybe you need some assistance with kind of processing through. That might be another thing. Aries, I think, can be seen as a very independent energy, but we could learn a lot from our opposite signs. And Aries is being Libra, learning how to communicate with others, someone who can give you an opposing view to maybe what you might be seeing and thinking or feeling, things along those lines. But we'll get into this a little bit more as we get into the tarot, but one kind of last thing I just wanted to mention as a sort of like an alternative. This isn't like medical advice or anything like that, but when it talks about the wife not, will not, or will conceives but will not deliver, if there's been maybe a bit of trickiness maybe with some or troubles with conception and things like that, if you haven't already looked into this, and again, take this if it resonates, but I remember seeing this. There's a book that's on astrological sort of terms that come within that tie in with pregnancy, and kind of looking at the different signs where maybe we would be some times to think about conceiving. Maybe around this, I would think that the Taurus new moon would be a very fertile time. But again, that's just astrology according to Justin. This would be something where I would look to see if there's someone who definitely specializes in that. And I'll look to see if I can find a link for that, because that's something that's been on my reading list there for a while. So just a little sidebar there if that's something that resonates, but we'll get into that more here in a moment. Let's go ahead and get into the tarot. But one last thing a couple of things I want to mention here. These readings that I do, they're not gender-specific readings, so apply these energies to people as they make sense for your situations. And also, I'm going to talk about different topics such as medical or financial, some law things, relationships, but they're by no means professional advice. Talk to your lawyers, your doctors, your healers, all of those good things, financial advisors. But let's go ahead. I'm going to pull 6 cards, and each of them are going to correspond with different themes there. And since we got changing line 3, I'm going to get a clarifier for the third card there. But the first card is going to deal with any sort of like short-term money matters and things along those lines, how we may be spending our time. So let's see what's going on with the monies. Ooh, I'm with it. Now, you got the Fool here. And something that just came off right off the bat, considering what the hexagram line was about guarding against robbers. I think that this is inspiration with the Fool. This is a new endeavor. This may be thinking about maybe wanting to do some sort of like new investments. Maybe you want to look at a different sort of course of study, or maybe you want to invest in a certain type of, maybe like a trip to get some sort of experience or something like that. I think that this is a time to broaden your horizons, but maybe look at the things that tell you that, maybe you can't do this because of X, or you have to wait for certain conditions to line up, like all the stars have to align to do this thing. But this Fool is just giving me a sort of like a do it sort of energy. This is just air energy. Instead of getting into like an overactive sort of mind here, it's more so thinking about the options that this thing maybe could present for you here, maybe the world that this is kind of would open up for you here, especially if this is something like maybe looking at maybe booking a trip for like maybe either a short trip or maybe even a long trip, whatever this happens to be happen for you. especially if I'm getting like if you have any sort of like ninth house placements or maybe going through any sort of like ninth house transits or things right now. That's maybe something else I'm kind of getting sort of there. And this may not have to be like an actual trip. Maybe this is looking into some sort of like book or something like that. Maybe you wanted to learn about a different culture. Maybe you want to read up on anything along those lines. But the Fool is very kind of fresh energy that's coming into the mix here. And I think this could be maybe even to the anticipation for the next cycle. Because just a little spoiler alert, I was of course getting notes all typed up and things for that one, and that one I am looking. I think there's something there in that. There's a lot of the I think the growing power of the moon is really going to be emphasized in this lunation here. So especially, and then I just got a little sign there, especially before Saturn gets into Aries. I think that this would be the time to invest in some things now and already have some things going so that when Saturn gets into Aries, that's maybe not as jarring. That's just another sort of little intuitive hit that's coming through. But let's go ahead and get into your next cards here. Was going to talk about any sort of like medical matters and things along those lines. See how the body's doing. Ooh, look at that. So you got the Ten of Cups here. And this may be a time where I think just like maybe something to do that would do just really good for the body would be just to hang around some people, to hang around like this could be a very familial card when we're thinking about the Ten of Cups here. That's one message. But there is something that's I'm getting this message that, especially if you've maybe just gotten over some sort of like maybe healing or that, like it's like you've gotten to this place where you're feeling good again, where you're back to feeling like normal, but it's like, let's say you've been doing a lot of like physical therapy and things, and then you're feeling better, so you just stop doing it. I think there's a message in there about being mindful about not just stopping. Like the healing doesn't just stop after you get like the discharge and things, or you get out of the cast. You have to continue to work at something as well. There's the Ten of Cups, I think, can be sometimes a bit of a complex card. There could be, I think, a bit of a disillusionment sometimes. Like you expect something to go some sort of way, or to get this sort of sense of feeling. And I think it lasts for a time. It reminds me of like when you get married, the first day it's just like that. The whole day of the marriage, you eat that up. It's like, it's great. But then the next day, it's like kind of back to life as normal. It's like, okay, maybe you got to go back to work, or got to go back to do the things. And, if you got kids and, just all kind of life just falls back. Now you just kind of have the title. It's changed, but it was a big deal. But now once it's not, it's just sort of like, oh. It's a weird thing that's kind of coming through, I think, with this Ten of Cups here. And this is almost even feeling maybe strange. Maybe you expected a certain type of news, possibly, but it's not hit. It's like it's not like you thought like it was going to be. Like you maybe thought this was going to. That's interesting with this Ten of Cups. All right, Brianna, that's all I got for you there. A little something to think about. Let's go ahead and get into your third card here, which talks about any sort of like legal matters or social affairs, things along those lines. Oh, come on, hands. All right. So you have the Nine of Wands here. And, the Nine of Wands is interesting here. This gives me one that maybe if you've been going through some sort of like legal settlement, that things have been kind of going on for a while there, that just considering the hexagram too, I'd be mindful before you kind of like would let your guard down. It's not to be any sort of like paranoia or anything, but it's just like making sure before like like making sure before we just like really kind of rest easy, making sure that things are signed. Like kind of counting your chickens before they hatch in a way. It's like oh, you thinking this thing is going to be done as sure as a set deal, and then there's like a curveball that's coming into the mix there. It's like I'd wait to make sure that things are like maybe finalized. Maybe we're thinking about some sort of like maybe if like a contract is going to come through or something like that. It's just like it's like before you start doing a bunch of work and building all these things, it's like making sure what you've actually secured here. That's very interesting. Let me get a clarifier on this, on the nine of or yeah, on the 9 of Wands. All right, so you got the 8 of Swords here, and that's what it feels like. Like something is it's like I before we make the assumption that I think like there's something is like a set deal. It's like something is there's like an area where we're getting where it's like maybe we missed like over like a certain documents here. It's like doing some sort of like double checking. I think is an energy that's kind of coming through here. But this I even think too. I think this energy too is getting a guarding of how you expend your energies when we're thinking kind of about social affairs and kind of social matters where we're looking at maybe maybe you've been needing to get some stuff done, but there've been just like a lot of people in between that has just been kind of messing up your canvas a little bit, like how you got these animals kind of all doing their own little thing here. But it's like when have you made time for yourself? It seems like there's maybe just like a bit too, maybe there's it's not like it's a too much socializing, but it's just like maybe looking at where your time has been spending, looking at how we're hanging out with people. Is it something that you leave where it's raising your vibration, or do you always feel like you're kind of on guard with this person, or that they have to? So that's something too. I would just kind of look into maybe the social fear or social spheres as well. That's another little message that's coming through there. But let's go ahead and get into your fourth card, which talks about any sort of like romantic matters, marriage, things along those lines, relationships. All right, so you have the 7 of Coins here. And one, I think that there's this thing of like you maybe having been waiting for a while, waiting on something to come to a fruition. Maybe you've been kind of courting something or like a situation that's just like it just seems like there's been a lot of like it's a feeling of a lot of patience, but it's just like nothing is moving. And so I think there's this question of there's especially kind of circling back to that Fool. It's like do we keep trying to even like that Fool, even to like the 10 of Cups. It's like maybe we thought something was going to be one thing, but then it just sort of was, if it was maybe more superficial than we thought it was, and then now it's just sort of like, oh, well, yeah, do I keep investing in this thing, or is this going to? It's like we're trying to see the end of something, how this maybe looks in the long term, but it's just like we're not able to bridge that gap in a sense with the 7 of Coins here. There's this doesn't feel like there's any sort of. But again, just kind of take that as that resonates, and that might not be if there doesn't feel like there's something there. If things have maybe kind of plateaued a little bit, maybe there's a need to look at what's interfering with that spark, what's draining the energy. Maybe we need to do like a explore some sort of thing, maybe as something together, maybe as a joint venture. Possibly there. That's something that's coming up. because that is interesting when you get to the, and this is just a little sidebar, just thinking about like, yeah, just like how the, it seems like the in this heck in the changing line, how the husband and the wife have these certain expectations, but it doesn't quite, they don't come to fruition there. So I think that there's, yeah, just looking at something, really kind of looking at something for what it is, I think, is what's coming with that seven of coins. But again, that doesn't have to, just be in love. But just, again, apply that as that resonates. I could even just kind of circle back here. Maybe because I will say a couple of kind of thoughts that there's time does not necessarily equate. I think the quality of a certain thing. It's the work I think that's put in on both sides, and the growth that is put in on, and how each other has been invested in. If that thing isn't going anywhere, then that's something that is, that's just something that needs to be evaluated here. But I do also think that there's this. I was just listening to something today that brought up an interesting perspective where it's like we can focus on the things that we're trying to cut out, like, where we have maybe there's been a lot of maybe anger, frustration, depression, and things. And it's like instead of trying to cut those things out, it's like how do I bring in more love and things to counterbalance these energies here, something along, when we try to fight against the force, it just keeps us kind of frustrated, keeps the energies tied up there. So that's just another thing that's kind of coming through. But let's get to your next card, which talks about any sort of like immediately pressing affairs. Interesting. So you have the Page of Swords here. In the Page of Swords, that's a busy mind. There's maybe a lot of mental energy that's coming up here. To me, this is getting one. Maybe if you have some ideas, kind of forming, like how these birds are forming into this kind of bigger concept here. I'm getting like there's like grabbing inspiration while the iron's kind of hot here. You got the idea of what this maybe would feel like with the Ten of Cups. Yeah, and it's like investing in this sort of thing here. I think the Page of Swords is a really great one for making any sort of ideas tangible. Bringing really making those things kind of come to form there. But yeah, that's another something that kind of I think they kind of meditate on with the page. The Page of Swords can also be a little combative, so I would look at any sort of like if there's any sort of like conversations to have, like again, this Ten of Cups is like you had some sort of like expectations, and if that's not quite following through there's certain things that are getting in the way. It's a looking at what I think both parties can do as well. That's just something else I think that's just kind of coming through with this. But let's get to your last card here, which talks about the destiny or the karma of the situation here. Oh, interesting. All right, so you got the Moon card here, and it's feeling uncertain, right now as far as like where maybe things are going, especially if you're getting ready to start up some sort of like new idea, or maybe you're getting to, maybe it's like you've maybe started a new relationship, and now it's just like, okay, you reach temper like where this is going, or something here is like an idea is forming, and I think it's not letting the uncertainty wane, kind of like deplete the energy so much. I think it's like instead of worrying about the what the outcome is going to be, just kind of going with the flow. But this is Pisces in the Moon card, and we've been in heavy Pisces energy for a while. We're starting to move out of it. Venus is about to move out of Pisces here soon. But there is where sometimes that uncertainty can be a bit overwhelming. I do think that uncertainty can also lead to, where our imaginations can run wild. They can also kind of run wild, in a different sort of way. It's something where it's like, ooh, but okay, not like I could fill this up with this or with that or with this, like it's instead of maybe seeing like monsters and shadows and things, it's just like, oh, I see opportunities and growth and treasures. That's kind of what this moon card is giving me here about just being mindful too, because again, you got the card of air here with the Fool and then the Pisces energy, how we get maybe caught up in the imagination, but also realizing too how powerful of the tool the imagination can be, and maybe visualizing what this landscape is, because even when the moon is full at night, it's casting these shadows in a way. So it's just, and it's all a matter of how we interpret those, that darkness maybe is something that's kind of coming through there. And just to kind of wrap up too, just thinking, kind of circling back again to your changing line, just kind of look. I'd pay attention to those who kind of keep you waiting for something, like, kind of maybe breadcrumbing in a sense is something that's coming through there. You're guarding against those that, and not just people, but again, of situations that maybe just kind of rob you of opportunities and keep you out distracted, keep the Fool out wandering, and as opposed to a real sort of specific quest here, just kind of roaming in the dark here. But the moon requires a bit of, it can feel like the wild side of you versus kind of the more domestic side of you are kind of at odds there with the moon. There's like a more kind of primal instinct that's coming up, and it's just like, do you let it get into a sort of like a fear sort of place there, reactive sort of place, or do we kind of have it, let it become like a home, like, my intuition is kind of telling me like I need to go here, I need to do this. It's like, thriving versus surviving is what I think this moon is kind of giving me here. Thriving in the uncertainty as opposed to kind of being in this kind of living like a rabbit, sort of needing to be, because rabbits got a lot of predators. So it's something, just something that's kind of coming through there as well. But all right, let's get a little advice from Mars. And before I get that one, I did get one more little hit with the moon, as far as to not let a paranoia set in either. Because I think sometimes when we feel sort of in that kind of uncertain place, we can get a little snappy. The primal instincts kind of kick in, and just like, because the Nine of Wands can really be on guard, and you might be getting in and that might even not just be you, maybe someone you're dealing with, but and if you've noticed someone who's maybe going through some, maybe experiencing some sort of like strange behavior, this feels just like maybe just acting out of their norm, maybe like whatever that norm is, maybe there's something that's occupying their minds. I think there's even something a little there with that to explore. But all right, so for your advice here, you got the Six of Cups, and let's go ahead and switch over, because I think this Six of Cups, it's like a guarding against, it's like it's guarding against the robbers, but it's like not letting that like maybe what past situations have done, or maybe like if we've had any sort of, yeah, just any sort of like mishaps, is to not let it taint that trust. Let it turn into like, okay, we're going to look for certain signs, when maybe someone's coming across, maybe promising this thing, or maybe again, maybe kind of breadcrumbing was an energy. I got that kind of Seven of Coins, or, kind of feeding this sort of idea, but this grand vision, but can't really deliver that. I think it's like, it's not letting be like, oh, I'll never love again, just as a basic example, but let it be like, okay, I'm not going to let someone just drag me along like this. I have certain expectations. Like if this thing isn't going somewhere, if you're not certain, that's great. You can be, then maybe we just need to be on a friendship basis then. That could be a conversation had, as opposed to thinking like, oh, I'm going to be able to change somebody. I think that we can't change anybody. All we can do is change ourselves. And Even in those moments where you find that you plateau, or or the progress is hindered in some sort of way, it doesn't last forever. That's another thing I was actually just kind of like listening to today, and it's just like, I think, the natural process of life. You start something new with the Fool. It's exciting. It's fresh. It's and then something happens. You reach a point, and then you get a little disillusioned, and then it's just like then you get into your head, and you Eight of Swords, and you get Nine of Wands, and Seven of Coins, and Eight of Swords, and it just like just it gets where you feel like you're just kind of stuck. But then you have your breakthrough, and then everything feels great again, because after the moon is the sun, and who doesn't love that? But I do think that you have to go through those moon periods sometimes, where it's a bit wilder, it's a bit more, it's a bit uncertain, it's a bit more, you're trusting those lunar type of kind of frequencies, those intuitive energies. But it's knowing that that's not going to last forever. And I like how it has this whale just kind of looking over different moments in life, and you come to look at them with different appreciations. I think when we come to reflect on certain things, and you see the tools because what those situations do is force you to grow, and they force you to develop new skills, and to make new relationships, and to do all the things. And then we end up, somewhere in hindsight, in the future, we appreciate that. Some a little faster than others, but yeah, I think that's all I got for you. That little something to meditate on. But if you like that, if anything resonated with you, give it a thumbs up, and share this if you know somebody who can get some nuggets of wisdom from this. I was going to do it. That's fine. And I think I think I know why. And share this if I already said that. And subscribe there, you moon. Hit that bell button to get notified when I have these videos each day. And let me shuffle for your surprise card or cards here. But if you want to know what's going on with the other celestial bodies outside of the moon, you can go over to my other channel, Alchemist 8, where I do weekly videos that come out every Mercury day. That's on a Wednesday. And just talk about where the planets are transiting and how to work with the energies. And then I also do this series where I talk about different planetary placements in different signs and different houses. And feel free, I'm actually getting ready to release a couple that someone had requested. They have like a first house stellium, and it was just like, hey, I have this Mars here, and then I got the a few other placements here, and I would love to know about these other placements. So I'm just like, bet. I'll have those released here soon. So there's about to be a lot of Libra coming out. just a heads up. But yeah, I do that, and if feel free if you want for me to do something like that. If you want me to go even more into these videos, I would love to eventually start doing just like maybe scheduling different lives for these things, and just like invite different people with these experiences. And because I see where certain ones get like a lot, and I'm just like getting the data for it right now, see what people have what placements. So definitely check that out. But let's go ahead and get into your surprise cards here. I'm with it. And this is, I think, a lovely way to kind of end this. You got the play card here. And that's interesting. This play gives me, when I'm thinking about things that hinder the progress, those vices that we have, those things that those little escapist tendencies, whatever they might be, the things we might consider play. But this play card is giving me that it's a not being. It's not to say that you can't go out and try things, or but I think it's like, what is really kind of your definition of fun, of play, and how long can something be enjoyable? It's kind of a let me see if I can get the words for this. Because you want to get out there and live life, you know what I mean? But I think how maybe can be packaged sometimes, the experience of life can be, what our example of work hard, maybe play hard concept, for example, that may not be for everybody. And I think there's something about finding out how you play, guarding against people who try to rob you of you living your true experience, and that may be uncertain. Like you may be wanting to explore these things, but it's just like that's not the conventional route about how to do this thing. But who cares about conventions? Go play. That's the point of this journey, to go, for you to make space, because there's plenty of space for you here to play around in, and to play with your charts and the energies that are available to you. And I think, yeah, this plateau here is, and that's another thing too. If you feel like you've sort of plateaued here, I think that there's an energy like maybe things have gotten too serious, and there's just a more need for just some more play, some more fun, whatever that looks like for you. And then again, it doesn't have to be like where, yeah, just whatever that means for you. That could be playing out with the animals here. That could be building a house. Look at your house with chicken legs. Like it could be whatever that is. But, yeah, just a little thing I think to just kind of, yeah, a little thing to consider there. Man, I think that's all I got for you. So, until the next lunar cycle, stay mindful out there. Keep eyes on that moon, 'cause she's out there smiling. And I will catch you. Oh, when am I going to catch you? On the next one. Oh, that's right. Sunday.